Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Addict by Week podcast, where we talk about news, reviews, perspectives, and everything of that nature. More emphasis on the perspectives because we haven't reviewed anything yet, or talked about any news, actually. And as always, I'm your host, Eric Wicheksanon, and I'm here today joined by absolutely no one. And yes, you heard that right. I don't have a guest for this week's episode because I just traveled home and I'm doing a government mandated quarantine for the next 5 days. And this week's episode, unlike other week's episode, is going to be some sort of a quarantine diary where I'm going to record every single day that I have to go through in quarantine. And it's not that bad. It's only 5 times 24 hours. It's going to be like that movie, 127 hours, but in audio format and less limb cutting, I hope. Not sure yet. Still my first night. Little backstory. I'm traveling home to Indonesia from the Netherlands for a family situation, I would say. And I've been following all the health rules, getting tested twice a week and all that. So, just being a good citizen and trying to adhere to all the rules. I'm not sure yet if this is going to be a full episode or it's going to be a bonus content and kind of skip the upcoming week because it is a lot of work and I'm kind of tired from all the traveling. It also depends on how long it is. But before we go any further, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcast on. And you can also follow us on our socials, both Insta and Twitter, at The Addict by Wick. I've stepped up my memes a lot, actually. And I'm trying to utilize that more just to promote. So also share the podcast. It would be a great help. Day 1. And damn, that was a lot of traveling. When I left Amsterdam, flew into the city I had to transit to, there were people who got up and took their luggages from the overhead compartment and walked onto the front of the plane before the plane was even close to stopping. Like, we were still taxiing far from our gate. And literally, I remember this lady just walked up, took her shit, and walked onto the front side and just stood there while we were taxiing. And she wasn't even sitting that far behind from the door. We were like the 12th row. Ma'am, okay, can we stop doing that? If you do that, you are a bad person. I have to tell you this right away. You are a bad person. I promise you the airport isn't going anywhere and the immigration line is still probably going to be shitty and long. It doesn't really make a difference. Plus, we landed at 9 p.m. It's still a busy time. You're not beating traffic or anything. Just sit down, wait till everything stops, and then walk out. That was not a fun flight as well. There were a lot of turbulence. It wasn't that full, but before we left, there was this couple who started arguing with each other. Plane didn't even move or back out maybe 40 minutes after the supposed flight time. That was annoying as shit. But everything after that went pretty well. The airport I stopped at actually had pretty good food. Had local food. Didn't really get food on the flight, even in the long flight from where I transit to Indonesia, which was a 14-hour flight. We got 2 brown bags with sandwiches and a cake and water. And that was it. And I think I made one of the biggest mistakes of my life, not buying food before we took off. I will never forgive myself for that, honestly. And then we finally got to Indonesia, where they were doing well in the airport. They were doing quite well with grouping people and doing all the immigration stuff. They had to take our data and so there are 2 choices. You either go to the government facility to quarantine for 5 days, or you can go to a hotel and do it yourself. So at first I opted to go to the facility and we took a bus there. There were like 20 of us. And when we got there, we stopped in front of the facility for around 40 minutes. I don't know why they didn't let us out because I don't think it was a good idea to all of us on one bus after everyone just got home from a long flight overseas, right? That's just not it. And the best part, there were actually people going onto the bus trying to sell us shit. Like, okay, who needs a SIM card? Who needs cigarettes? Who needs food for the night? Because it was already 11 p.m. by that time. And the facility's not even far. It was maybe 25 minutes from the airport. It just took us very, very long to get everything sorted. But long story short, I got there and I opted to go to the hotel instead because one, I needed the internet to do all of my schoolwork, and I want to be more comfortable if I had to quarantine by myself for 5 days. You know, I'd rather just have the comfort of not losing my mind as the week goes. So that was nice. My family doesn't actually know that I'm coming here. Only my mom knows and one of my brother, but the rest of the family didn't even know. I kept it. I'm trying to keep it as a surprise. So it was super nice when I found out that my mom was able to send me food from the outside and just kind of dropped it off here. And the people here, the employees, clean everything from the outside first before delivering it to my room. It's a pretty nice room to spend 5 days by yourself, basically. It did, however, took a good minute for them to deliver my things from downstairs to my room, but it's understandable. They're doing all the procedure they have to keep both them and myself safe, so I appreciate that. Second 24-hour in this place, and I just realized that being cooped up by myself in an enclosed room with no fresh air is probably not the best idea when you have ADHD and BPD. I get to spend a lot of my time with myself. And I know I had an episode about how we can be comfortable when we're alone and all that. But I have to retract some of my statements and say it very much depends on the situation. If you can go outside, then yeah, sure. Like, I could spend a whole 2, 3, 5 weeks by myself. But in just one place, and thankfully I'm doing well. I'm doing okay. So I can't really complain about that. But you chose to listen to this, so you technically chose to listen to my rants. So, kind of sorry about that. I'm also a little bit of a hypochondriac myself, meaning that I could probably convince myself to be sick. Say, okay, if I have a headache, I somehow could convince myself that something worse is actually happening when it's not. It's part of the anxiety experience. Not fun. And the thing is, my hands and feet get mad cold every single time for no reason. So whenever I touch any part of my body, say my chest, my legs, they feel warm. And that's because my hands are cold. So that spiraled down into a little bit of a panic attack here and there, but we prevail. Third 24-hour cycle in this room. So I'm recording, what is it? It's kind of late at night right now. Had a weird day. I thought my jet lag was gone, but I did not sleep till 6 a.m. last night as much as I tried. And I was just manic as fuck trying to go to bed. Somehow, some way, I finally, thank God, fall asleep, but only got 4 hours of sleep. Also took my second PCR test. That means my first PCR test was negative, because if it's positive, then I wouldn't be able to take the second one. Oh, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. Hopefully, if everything goes well, if this one's negative as well, then I get to leave in 2 days. And I decided to binge the whole first season of Attack on Titan. My friend, Pankaja, a friend of the show as well, has been telling me to watch Attack on Titan for the longest time. And I just kept kind of saying no to it, kind of procrastinating it. And it is hard for me, like I said, I think in the first episode, to watch anime or watch something in a different language because I have to fully focus on the content and read the subtitles because I don't speak Japanese. But I did it anyways. I went through 25 episodes in one day, and I'm gonna drop a little review of the first season because I'm planning to have a whole series review with Pankaja. And that's where the review comes in this podcast tagline. Yeah, the first season of Attack on Titan, what can I say? It was captivating. It runs quite slow, but that's also why I prefer reading the mangas, the comic books, for those who don't know, compared to watching the anime, because I'm a fast reader and I can go at my own pace. But it was a good show. There were lots of plot twists that I didn't really see coming, and the animation's amazing. I think it came out in 2013, and I don't watch a lot of anime, so I don't really have anything to compare it to animation-wise, but it was really good. The fighting was amazing. The storyline itself was amazing. Again, a little slow. You know how, if you watch anime, you know how there are a lot of inner monologuing within the characters, and there were moments where they just take their time a little bit too much while fighting or while doing some important shit that they got distracted. Let's say, I'll give you an example. It's a very vague one. Say a character is trying to attack a Titan, and they would literally have this inner monologue while attacking them for a good 30 to 40 seconds, and when they look up, their enemy's just gone, and they got their shit rocked because they were distracted. But that's also, I think, a lot in anime, so that's understandable. And this show is funnier than I thought. Like, deadass funnier than I thought. There's also this 5-year time jump, 5 episodes in, that kind of confused me at first, but it wasn't hindering any progress or any of the plot. And that's all I could say about the first season. Again, I'm going to make a whole episode of the series. Season 4 just came out in November, I believe. So I'm going to wait it out till they finish, because season 4 is the last season of the series. And I'm going to ask Pan to hop on the pod to review the whole show, because he's been telling me that season 2 and 3 is on earlier seasons of Game of Thrones level good. And if you tell me that, I'm going to eat that shit up right away, because your boy loved Thrones. But yeah, that was day 3. Literally did not do anything other than go to class for a little bit and spent 8 hours binging the whole season, and it was worth it. 4th 24 hour, and I think this might be the last one. Can't do this shit anymore. I'm tired. I want to go outside. Luckily, it's been raining as fuck all day. It's just thundering and lightning, and I think the street in front of where I'm staying is flooded a little bit. Just normal, I guess. And I haven't heard anything about my PCR results, which means it's a good thing, because I think if it's a positive, then they'll evacuate me right away and put me into treatment. So yeah, knock on wood. Hopefully I get to get out tomorrow, because I'm starting to lose my mind. And since it is my last night right now, I tried to order a cocktail from the hotel bar, but they told me that they were out of cocktails, and that got me mad confused, because how are you a hotel restaurant and not have any cocktail whatsoever? And they also told me, it's like, okay, the only thing we have left is beer, and we only have 3 left. They deadass only had 3 bottles of beer left, which is unfortunate. Don't get me wrong, I love beer. I love the taste of it. I love chilling and drinking beer, but I wanted to treat myself. I wanted to get a little bit tipsy before I leave and have to go to my family's house and spend a whole month with them. You know, I wouldn't mind being a little bit intoxicated, but we move. They brought me 1 singular bottle of beer, and they brought it in an ice bucket, and the beer was warm. And I'm starting to question my whole life decision, because again, if you ran out of cocktails and you only have beers left, how do you not have cold beers? At least put them in the fridge. And yes, you can kind of hear my wits and sanity slowly creeping out of my body. This just made me realize that I should not live in a country where weed is illegal, because the only substance that's available is alcohol. And I'm not a big alcohol guy. It's just not my thing. I like to have a drink every now and then, but it can't be something that you overdo. But also weed. You shouldn't overdo weed. You shouldn't overdo anything that intoxicates you. Moderation is key, people. Moderation is key. Remember that. And it's also not for everyone. So this has been another bonus episode, full episode of the Addict Bywick podcast. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Honestly, I've published 6 episodes so far, and I've actually gotten listeners who take their time to listen to me and my friend talk about, whatever that just pops out in our head. You guys have actually been really nice, and you guys have actually been really sweet and giving me feedbacks and reviews. That has just been giving me all the motivation to keep doing what I'm doing. I enjoy talking, as you guys probably find out by now. This has kept me sane for the past 4 or 5 days that I have to quarantine by myself. Before we go, though, you guys can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. And follow us on our socials at The Addict Bywick. And share this podcast, if you guys can, with your friends, with your family, or with anyone you think that might enjoy this podcast. Maybe they have the same sense of humor, same way of thinking as me and my guest. And also check out my Patreon, also at The Addict Bywick. You can support the show starting as low as €2, literally the price of a cup of coffee. And I will probably use that money for a cup of coffee and buy equipment. Of course, I'm going to try to improve my equipment, get another producer on to help me on the show. So maybe I can drop 2 episodes a week instead of just once a week. Maybe get an animator so I can put this on YouTube with animation, because I don't really want to put my face out just yet. If you want to see how I look like, you can go to my Instagram. I have been your host, Eric Wichaksono, and for my non-existent guest, we're going to sign off. Thank you so much for listening. Bye!